All right, so let's dive into LangChain. If you're in the AI world, you've heard of it, it feels like it's absolutely everywhere. But today we're going to slice through all the noise and get to what really matters. What does it promise? And more importantly, how are people actually using it to build real things? To really get it, let's start with a super simple question that honestly gets to the very core of the problem LangChain was made to solve. You can have the smartest, most powerful large language model on the planet, but if you ask it a simple question like, hey, what's the weather like today? It has no idea. So why is that? And that question, well, it points directly to the one fundamental limitation that every single LLM from GPT-4 to Llama actually shares. So here's the best way to think about it. An LLM is like a brilliant brain in a jar. It's been pre-trained on a mind-boggling amount of text and data, but that data is static. It's a snapshot in time. So yeah, it can write a beautiful poem or summarize a dense article, no problem. But it can't check a live website, it can't connect to an API, and it has zero memory of what you just talked about 5 minutes ago. It's incredibly powerful, but totally sealed off from the real, live world.
Okay, so if the LLM is this brilliant brain stuck in a jar, what's the next logical step? You got to give it a body, right? A way to see, hear, and interact with the world outside the jar. And that, right there, is where LangChain comes into the picture.
At its heart, LangChain is basically the nervous system for that brain. It's the plumbing, the wiring that connects the LLM to things like a weather API or your company's internal documents. It gives the AI tools so it can actually perform actions. Effectively, it gives the brain senses and hands to finally interact with the world.
So what's really cool about LangChain is that it's not just one single thing. Nope, it's more like a toolkit, almost like a set of Legos that developers can snap together to build some seriously powerful apps. Let's break down a couple of the most important pieces.
Probably the #1 way people use this is with a pattern called Retrieval Augmented Generation. I know, it's a mouthful. Let's just call it RAG. This is how you make an LLM an expert on your specific data. The process is actually pretty clever. You load up your documents, say a bunch of PDFs, chop them into smaller pieces, and then store them in a special database. So now, when a user asks a question, the system can instantly find the most relevant little snippets of info and give them to the LLM along with the question. It makes sure the answer is based on actual up-to-date facts from your documents, not just what the AI remembers from its training.
Okay, so RAG is amazing for giving the AI your specific info, but agents? That's the next level up. With an agent, the LLM isn't just answering a question from a document you gave it. It's actually reasoning. It looks at a complex task, figures out what tools it needs, like maybe a Google search, then a calculator, then another search, and then it plans and carries out those steps all on its own. It's the difference between giving someone an answer key and sending them into a library to go figure it out for themselves. So let's break that down. When do you use which one? It's actually pretty simple. You use a chain when the steps are predictable, like first, translate this text. Second, summarize it. It's a straight line. You use an agent when you don't know the steps ahead of time. It's for those complex problems where the AI needs to think, make decisions, and figure out its own path forward.
Okay, theory is great and all, but what does this look like when it's actually working in the real world? Let's check out a fantastic case study from the world of education that brings all these pieces together. So get this. A university's biology department took all their course materials and fed them into a LangChain system to help with assessing student knowledge. The first result was just a massive win for efficiency. They saw a whopping 70% drop in the time their faculty had to spend creating and grading tests.
But honestly, saving teachers time is just the side effect. The real story, the amazing part, is what it did for the students. Because they were getting instant, super detailed feedback, the student success rate jumped by 15%. I mean, that is a huge, meaningful impact. And take a look at this. This is what that feedback actually looked like. The AI doesn't just say, you got it wrong. No, it explains why it's wrong. It highlights the gaps in their understanding, and it even suggests which parts of the course to go back and review. It's basically a free, personal tutor available 24/7 for every single student. Just incredible.
So, LangChain is powerful. It's changing the game in education. We can all go home now, right? Well, not so fast, because there's a fascinating twist to this story. There's a growing gap between how LangChain is presented in tutorials and how the pros are actually using it when real money is on the line.
Someone did an analysis, a huge one, looking at over 10,000 production apps for more than 500 companies. And what they found is kind of a bombshell. Almost 90% of the successful apps that use LangChain in production completely ignore the high-level official patterns that the framework is famous for.
So what's going on here? Well, it turns out that developers in the trenches are discovering that these fancy, complex abstractions, while they're awesome for building a quick demo, they can actually become a real headache in a live production system. For instance, over 3/4 of teams build their own memory system because the built-in ones just aren't reliable enough. And an incredible 84% flat out avoid LCL. That's the LangChain expression language because it can be almost impossible to debug when something goes wrong, and it often slows things down.
Okay, so if all the most successful teams are ditching the fancy features like agents and complex chains, what's left? What are they actually using LangChain for? Where's the real, lasting value?
And the answer, the pattern that's really working in the real world, is super clear. Smart teams are treating LangChain less like a rigid framework and more like a library of fantastic time-saving tools. They love it for its document loaders, its text splitters, and its easy-to-use wrappers for calling different AI models. But for the really critical stuff, the core logic, the error handling, the memory, they're building that themselves, custom fit to their own application.
And that brings us to this really interesting final thought. Maybe we've all been looking at LangChain a little bit wrong. Maybe its true superpower isn't in being this complex, all-in-one framework for building AI agents. Maybe, just maybe, it's the world's most important AI utility belt, giving every developer the essential, reliable tools they need to connect that brilliant brain in a jar to the real world, on their own terms.